I'm going to call this meeting to order. Good evening. If you could join me in a moment of silence. And then if you would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Cherry, if you could do roll call. Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
She will not be able to hear you unless you're directly in your microphone.
Yeah, is her microphone on?
Turn it on.
Present.
Jill's here. Jill!
Cherry Wintoki here. Michael and Kayla.
All right, this is an open meeting and has been noted as such. Before we get started with our normal agenda, we have kind of an oddity that we need to deal with this evening. So following Christmas, prior to the new year, we had an unfortunate and unexpected loss of our board member, Andy Mankey. May he rest in peace. We want to thank him publicly for his service. We are now sitting with a vacant seat. I've been working with legal counsel as to what that looks like and what we are required to do between now and the election in April, because that seat is a seat that is up for election. So between now and then, per our policy and state statute, we have to do our best effort and due diligence to fill that seat. The way that our policy reads on board vacancies, which is 142.5, if you want to read it, we have a process where we have to advertise that there is an open seat to the community members. They can indicate their interest to Sean. We can then, the following month, bring them here and interview them, and then the board can vote on that temporary interim seat. So after talking in committee this month, I am bringing forth a proposal that legally council has told me we have the option to do. We do not have the option of changing the policy, because it is guided by state statute, as to what determines a vacancy, but we do have the availability to waive temporarily how we fill that vacancy. So in an effort to not sit as a board with even numbers for the next 3 months, my recommendation and my proposal is that we waive, and I will make a motion that we waive our process for filling that vacancy, and then appoint a previous board member with the approval of this board to fill in temporarily as an interim board member for the full board meetings of January, February, and March.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
So I have a second and a motion. Any questions or discussion? Okay, so you made a motion to waive.
You are correct.
Okay, so all those in favor say aye.
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 I will make that motion and also make the motion to appoint Todd Clemens, who has been a previous board member here for the Mukwonago Area School District. He has 12 years under his belt, so he is a very natural, easy fit to join us for the next 3 months, as he knows the policies, the procedures, and how everything is going to go. So I make the motion that we place Todd Clemens. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Aye.
Thanks, Jill. Sorry I didn't wait. Todd is here, so I'm going to have Todd actually come and join us over here in the seat. And now we will continue on with
Welcome back.
our meeting. Welcome, Todd. I'm sure you did not see this coming. Okay, so as a reminder, we do have citizens' comments. We do, on our agenda this evening, have our COVID quarantine policies for in-home positives that we will be voting on and discussing later. So I do have 4 citizens' comments. When I call your name, you can come up to the table. You do have 3 minutes, and Mary will be timing you. She'll give you a heads up as your time is coming to a close. So Armando Brazzoni, you're first.
Good evening. Main reason why I'm up here today is, the COVID situation. We're even on the school's website, it still calls it a pandemic, and it isn't a pandemic anymore. It's called an endemic. When are we going to get over this? Our kids in school are still getting yelled at if they talk to someone behind them at lunch, because it's only two to a table and you can't turn around. That just happened last week. Another thing is with this attendance. You have as a parent, you're afraid to call in your kid sick and tell him that he has a headache or he's stuffy because he has allergies, because they're going to call and say, well, you got to stay home for 10 days. And then you're going to get that friendly 10-day letter saying that you've missed 10 days. This is ridiculous. Let's get back to normal. Let us keep our kids home if we want to keep them home. If we're that afraid, then we'll keep them home. But this has to end. When are you guys going to get it through your heads to let it end? People are upset about this. The last election of the school board, it was over a 56-44 difference, and veto got in. This one is going to happen the same way. In 1 to 2 weeks, the GOP of Waukesha will be putting out their picks on who they think should be in here. People are going to listen. This board is going to change drastically. I think Art and Joel will come up in 23. This is probably their last year. They won't be here much longer. We don't want liberal people.
Please keep on
Waukesha-
topic, which is COVID quarantine.
This all has to be with COVID. It all is.
Well, we're
Because
not
they
just
vote
making
against it. They
personal
vote against it.
attacks.
Hold it. You are an elected official, so if I want to make a personal attack, they have to take it. You're a person. Yes, no, you do. Yes, you do.
Actually, that's
So,
not
yes,
necessarily
yes, it
protected
is.
under the First Amendment in public meetings.
But we're going there. This has to end. Get back to normal. Stop all this idiocy. Our kids can't even go home with each other because the buses won't allow them. They have to sit assigned seats. It's obnoxious. Get over it. It's never going to go away. It's never going to go away. We have to get back to normal. Last year, in March and February, I said, why don't you guys be the leader and end the mask for schools? But you sat back and you wanted to be third or fourth.
10 seconds.
Why don't you guys be the leaders and end it all first and let other school districts follow? Hey, let's do what Mukwonago did. They got great faculty, they got great everything. Let's do what they did and end it as well.
Time's up.
Even Wauwatosa's doing it. They're starting to come a little bit more. And we're a lot more conservative than they are. So let's get it over with, end it. Parents are sick of it.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Karen Tillicki.
All right, I'll make this as short as possible. But I have here some files, and I will continue to collect more files of all the truths that are occurring right now. So, so in this whole thing, all right, so first of all, information is vital for parents to be informed about the fact that these tests are under emergency use authorization. These tests are all from China, and with quarantining, that's the only reason why we're quarantining. So is simply the tests. So if the parents just don't do the tests, all this COVID goes away. And that's how it works. See, this COVID is not, this is a plandemic. They have an 86-page COVID playbook that they actually have. I actually printed it all. And it's all based off of the CARES Act. So this whole CARES Act pushed through everything. So I'm just wondering too, with all of this, is somehow these tests and the quarantines, everything is so connected. So there's no safety data on the tests to actually say that these tests actually test for positive actual COVID. Actually, you can test I believe it's Red Bull, and it comes out positive. So you can go ahead and give that a good shot, because it probably will be positive. In the past, there have been some tests, these tests actually have toxins in them. The actual swab itself has little fibers in them. They have this thing in there. If you look under a microscope, you will find the most interesting things. If you rub it against a slab of meat, you can actually look at what is left behind. There are things that probably isn't pretty normal for a swab. These tests are all made in China. So that's another aspect to kind of maybe explore. Why are there none in the United States? Why are our labs not producing any of those tests? Why? There's so many questions. So the composition and the toxicology of these chemicals, like ethylene oxide. Did you know ethylene oxide actually is an actual chemical that is equal to formalin? Now formalin is probably so toxic, it is actually a mutagen and a tetragen, which means it actually can manipulate your DNA and change your DNA,
10
give
seconds.
you cancers as well. So these tests are the center point to all of the COVID, the whole thing. So as far as I really think that parents need to take a good look at all of what is going on, and they need to end testing immediately. There are numerous.
Okay, wrap it up.
There are numerous examples and lots of considerations to look at with all of these tests. The home test kits, none of them are safe. Sodium azide is actually, it is actually so toxic that if you actually, I honestly don't believe that people are handling it without gloves, because if you look up the chemical itself, you will find out that you're not to dump it down a drain, you're not to do anything, that you can't even, it's so toxic to fish and to the aquatic life. You have to go look up all this information, and what kind of tests and the ingredients are they using at schools and touching all of the kids. Even if you, I mean, I guess I would really seriously consider not ever having this touch your body at all. It's carcinogen, and it is absolutely not safe. And unless they have demonstrated safety testing, I seriously, for in the schools and for all of our children, for protecting our children, that is what it's all about. And as a nurse, I will be here. I will continue to be here. I will continue to collect data, and I will continue to protect these children. I guess.
Karen, your time is up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next, Mark Summers.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So, Karen was just providing you with some information that's out of love for everyone, but most importantly, for the safety of our children. You've been informed many times regarding the dangers of PCR testing due to ethylene oxide, graphene oxide, and sodium azide. You've been informed what it does to a person's body and of the negative impact of pregnant women and unborn children. They're toxic. Why are we still having them in our schools? We've asked repeatedly that the testing stop. It needs to be removed, plain and simple, immediately. We continue to do this. We continue to inform the board of this, and it's not an agenda item. Why is that? We have to stop with the in-home positive quarantine. Quarantines need to be out, period, done. It's about getting back to normal, because this was a pandemic. It was a pandemic from the start. The soft censorship of parents needs to stop as well. That's shown through in the agenda. We need to stop that. Enough's enough. It's wrong and it's illegal. We are the parents and the taxpayers of this district. It is our right to speak up in this meeting. The other thing is, Karen has firsthand experience in all of this. All of it. Nobody here does. And yet, people are making medical decisions for our kids. You don't have a right to do that. We need to stop trusting the science that's just regurgitated on MSM and the federal government and the CDC. What merit do any of them have? None. I'll tell you, it's none. Nothing they have said is right. They've gone back on it countless times. So, the push for experimental vaccines also needs to stop too. I think this was brought up at a previous meeting where a statement was made on key news for families. I'll read that. The school board has had no discussions of moving our schools to virtual learning. We are sharing this information so that our families can be part of the solution by keeping ill students home, getting their children tested and vaccinated, and consider serving as a substitute for our various different employee groups. That statement should be removed. That was wrong. That's your personal opinion, not ours.
10 seconds.
Where's the reprimand for this action? And Mr. McNulty, I am formally requesting a copy of your surety bond. Or it's also considered a fidelity bond or faithful performance bond. For the audience, what is that? It's a guarantee that the bondholder will follow the laws, perform their duties, and not harm anyone. The bondholder has a personal responsibility for all claims filed against their bond. And I don't care that you're retiring. We're a community that must do better for our children. Our school board needs to place focus on what we entrust it with, and that is the education of our children, not the medical care. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, we have Carolyn Simon.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Simon, and I am running for school board in April, and I'm really excited. The COVID quarantine for students is what I wanted to talk about. I'm excited that that's on the agenda, and I'm hoping that it is voted on tonight and we can eliminate all the quarantine as far as if there's an in-home person sick, a sibling or a parent. Our kids are at school and they spend most of the time with their friends and families at school, and we've decided that it's okay if there's a classmate that's sick that has sat next to them for 3 days and they have COVID. As parents, I would say, you're fine, just go back to school. You don't have COVID. However, if a sibling who they only see for a few hours a day has COVID, we're keeping kids home and we're making quarantine. So I think that's silly. I really think that if there's an in-home positive, it's up to the parents to decide if they should send their kids to school. That kind of goes along with what Armando was saying too, as far as everything else. We need to put that power back into the parents' hands. I know the entire mitigation is not up for discussion tonight, but hopefully it'll make the agenda soon. And I guarantee when it comes up on the agenda in April, we will hopefully be able to eliminate all of the quarantine policies. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to consent agenda. I'm looking for the approval of school board meeting minutes from December 20th, 2021, and approval of voucher numbers 135530 to 135907 in the amount of 3.1 million and change, and receipts for December of 2021 totaling 7.7 million and change. Do I have any questions or concerns? Okay, that is approved by consent. And then we will move into our presentations, and we'll start with our student rep reports.
All right, so for Mukwonago High School, the 16th annual MHS Save Nickel War raised the most money ever, which was $2,741 for the Waukesha Parade victims. The MHS Save Club has raised over $15 grand for the community over the years. The Counselor's Corner, a new MHS article, will be in each parent newsletter and will highlight that week's advisory lessons created by the counselors. Advisory topics will include wellness, sleep, perseverance, and other important lessons. And then Mr. Uhazi, the choir director at the high school, asked me to give you all the Night on Broadway programs that I handed out to you guys earlier.
Next on to Parkview Middle School. The Parkview Middle School staff invites parents and current 6th and 7th grade students to attend their 2022 through 2023 course information night. National Crossing Guard Week was the week of January 17th. PVMS is fortunate to have Mrs. Judy Podney looking out for the Parkview students. Thank you for all who do what you do to keep our students safe. On Friday, January 14th, the Parkview Middle School Parent Advisory Group hosted their FAME Students Activity Night for the current 7th and 8th graders. Over 300 PVMS students attended. Thank you to Parkview parents, MHS students, and MASD board members for volunteering to help. At the end of December, student government sold candy cane cards to help spread out holiday cheer for students and staff. Cards were sold to raise funds for Hawes of Waukesha County. 3 leadership board members, Raina J., Sierra C., and Abby L., organized this service project, and as a school, Parkview raised nearly $650 and collected 2 large bags of pet donations. In January, Parkview student government sponsored the 6th grade annual Dude Be Nice campaign. This year's theme was Throw Kindness Like Confetti. The highlight from this year's efforts was to throw kindness in PVMS and in the community. It includes student-to-staff confetti cards when kids wrote kind letters to staff members and delivered them to their doors in envelopes. Student-created love bugs for residents of Linden Grove, student government nominations for nicest kid they know, and recognized with certificates and treats. The student government purchased coffee from Espresso Love and donuts from Occasional Bakery for staff. Parkview's recent athletic accomplishments include recently completing the first half of their winter sports season. The 24 7th grade boys participated on 2 basketball teams. 22 8th grade boys participated on 2 basketball teams. All basketball teams have a 12-game schedule. 38 7th and 8th grade boys and 2 7th grade girls made up their wrestling team, and wrestlers competed in 8 dual meets and 3 Saturday invites.
At Clarendon Elementary School, Clarendon Avenue spent the month of January focusing on their One Book, One School event, which featured The Wish Tree by Catherine Applegate. During this annual event, students and their families read chapters from the book together. A few highlights that occur throughout the month are an opening assembly to introduce the book, daily trivia with prizes, community readers who come in to read several chapters to Clarendon students, and a school-wide art project to close out the One Book, One School event. A 1st grade class was read to, a chapter from the book from the Mukwonago Chamber of Commerce.
On to Rolling Hills Elementary School. Winter activities at Rolling Hills are going strong. Boys basketball, ski, and snowboard club at Alpine Valley, Girl Scouts, and study club are all offered. Rolling Hills 5th and 6th grade performed their music, band, and orchestra pieces at the Greenwald Performing Arts Center. Students enjoyed the opportunity to perform on the big stage in front of family and friends. Thank you to the Mukwonago High School and Performing Arts Center for allowing Rolling Hills to perform in this beautiful venue. The Feed to Dream food drive has yet another success. Thank you to all the parents for their generosity at Rolling Hills. Restocked the shelves at Mukwonago Food Pantry in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. This inspired youth to serve their community and raise awareness about hunger in our community. A record amount of food, wash supplies, and canned goods were donated.
At section on the evening of January 25th, it was the 5th and 6th grade combined band music and orchestra concert held at the PAC. To welcome guests, the MHS Shades of Blue Choir performed while the guests found their seats. The evening was also the first concert for their new 4th and 5th grade choir at section. All groups had spectacular performances. Thank you to Kathy Doty, Dale Weimer, and Nyla Clements for their efforts to put this musical event together.
At Prairie View Elementary School, the 3rd grade students spent the month of January reading biographies and had selected one individual to bring into the 3rd grade Wax Museum. The students dressed up as the individual they were portraying and shared information about why the individual is famous, a lesson that could be learned from them, and other interesting information. Mrs. Perkins' class worked hard to write a class poetry anthology with the theme of winter. In order to gather some of their ideas, they went outside into the beautiful Wisconsin weather to brainstorm ideas and become inspired to write their own poems.
Thank you. We will move on to our SR3 planning process presentation.
All right, so can you guys, Jill, can you hear me okay? Jill? All right, I don't know if she can hear me, but, all right, I'm gonna move forward here. So with a very brief presentation here to talk about our SR3 budget. So to date, there's been 3 rounds of funding that school districts across the country have received. The first 2 rounds of funding have come from the prior presidential administration, and the current round of ESSER funding has come from the current administration. We're just talking about the 3rd round today. As a part of the ESSER 3 grant program, school districts need to consult with stakeholders in their community to get feedback on how the budget should be designed. So we are taking a step within that process tonight. So we're just going to go through some information about what we're doing and where this is going to go over the next month or so. So part of this process is to consult with some groups in the community: families, teachers, principals, school staff members, pupil services, and special ed staff, and district administrators. So I'm just going to talk about how we're doing that right now and where we're going. So for ESSER 3 funding, we received, there was a pot of money that was established by Congress, and the first 90% of that pot of money was distributed based on a school district's prorated amount of students in poverty, known as a Title I distribution. So Title I dollars is another form of federal funding to help students in poverty. They follow that distribution for the initial 90% distribution of money. So we received $886,000 in that first round, and we received that here in the fall. We have to use at least 20% of that. Oh, I'm sorry. We lost Jill. Thank you, Erica. We must use at least 20% of that $886,000 on evidence-based intervention strategies. Okay. Round 2 is tentative. We are currently scheduled to get $3.3 million. That was what the DPI proposed on January 19th, and Joint Finance Committee has 14 days to respond to that. And if they don't respond, then it's approved by consent. So we're getting close to the end of that, and I haven't heard any talk that there would be any modifications proposed. 100% of whatever we ultimately do get, once round 2 is finalized, whatever we do get there, 100% of that must be used on evidence-based intervention strategies. So we'll know that here very shortly. The money we get in ESSER 3 can be used for expenses incurred between March 2020 and September 30th, 2024. So there's a deadline on when we can use this money. And we can use this money to reimburse ourselves for costs that we carved out of our existing budget for kids that we taught face-to-face throughout 1920. We can reimburse ourselves for a lot of the things that we've done, or we can use that now and into the future, okay? So we have a little bit of choice in that matter. So the funds are intended to help safely reopen and then sustain safe school operations, and to address academic recovery for students that have been impacted from the events here recently. Not all costs are allowable, so we can't just put whatever we want onto the grant. We have to work within the rules of the grant there. So some of the uses that we'll focus on here and are allowed is academic recovery. So some examples of academic recovery can occur in summer school, before and after school tutoring programs, extended school year ideas that we can move forward with here. There's preparedness and response. Example of that is improving indoor air quality, which we've done a little bit of that work already and are focusing on doing some more. Addressing long-term school closures in the event that it happened again. We hope it doesn't, but if it did, doing things like providing meals and delivering meals and keeping some basic functions that we as a school district provide to all kids, keeping those things going. Outreach and services for special populations. There's certain segments of our student population that require a little bit more help. English language learners or kids with IEPs, homeless students, helping those types of students and putting some outreach to their parents and to those kids. We can dedicate those funds towards those student groups. Mental health services and supports, so think guidance counselors, school psychologists, social workers. This money can be used for those types of positions. And then educational technology, so devices, hardware, software, whatever it takes to help kids learning in and out of school. All right, so as part of this process, we have to collect input. So on January 20th, we launched a survey. We shared this survey with our students' families and our key news for families. We sent it out to all 700 staff members in our school district, asking for their input, and we also put this on our district website. To date, we have 160 responses as of this morning, and our survey is still open. We're going to keep that open, so we're still taking feedback on that. We sought the input from our administrative council, which is our principals, our supervisors of Buildings and Grounds, Andy Wagner, Technology, Kelly Kovneski, and Food Service, Pam Harris. Christine Bowden and her staff in the Pupil Services and Special Education Department are part of Admin Council, as are the district administrators. So myself, Sean, Stephanie, Ben Casso, Stephen Williams. We've been working on plans. We initially started in October, and we've kind of finalized just our proposals of what we'd like to see happen in December. So now we're integrating that with what we're hearing from the community and our employees. Looking through those 160 responses and the input from our admin council, the themes that we've seen so far kind of come around about 10 areas. Mental health for students and staff is one of those. Additional staffing to reduce class sizes, adding paraprofessionals or instructional assistants, securing substitute teachers for when we have staff shortages, which we've had a number of this year, getting staff to provide interventions to students who either need it for reading or for math, reading specialists, etc., providing teacher payments for additional work that occurs outside the normal school day, providing lessons to kids who are home is not easy, and they'll tell you, just ask them. But for the additional duties that teachers are undertaking and have undertaken, they can be used for that. Extended learning, so summer school, after school tutoring, extended school year, and anything that we can add on to our current offering would be another way to do academic enrichment. We have food service as a theme that we've heard from people for breakfast and lunch, keeping kids fed. It's easy to learn when you're not hungry. Air quality and building improvements is a theme, as is nursing services, outreach to with students with special needs, technology, curriculum supplements, so that could be software at times, or other materials and resources that are used by our teachers and interventionists. We've had themes of giving the money back, and then we had a bucket of that's kind of other. It's everything else. It's after school recreation, paying down school debt, some other things. So those are the themes that we've seen so far. What we're just a few things here about the considerations as we begin and work towards finalizing the game plan here. ESSER funding is one-time funding, so it should be used on one-time things. We don't want to use this money to pay for our ongoing budgetary things, because you're going to create a fiscal cliff when the money runs out. What do you do? So let's not put ourselves in a bad situation. Let's use this money on one-time expenses to help kids recover academically, and perhaps meet some other needs that are allowable uses. We should maintain a level of flexibility with the funds. So as time goes, we'll make a plan, but if that plan needs to change, we can change, okay? Let's be flexible with how we go forward. As needs change, we can change. Our funding levels for our general operating budget. So if you get rid of all grants and just say, here's the budget that we have, are we sustainable? Obviously, we want to stay there. Our funding that's created by the state government, our assembly, and our state senate, and our governor, we work by biennial budgets, as we know. Our revenue is frozen this year as it was last year. It was frozen this year, and it will stay frozen next year. So what we do in terms of providing service to kids and teaching them, we have the same inflationary costs that businesses have. Salaries are up, hourly rates for employees everywhere are up, utilities are up, transportation's therefore up, health insurance is up. We don't have funding to work towards that. So obviously we have challenges here as we move forward into the 22-23 school year. When you take a look at our funding here, so this is a snapshot of the last 9 years, I'm sorry, 8 years, and plus looking ahead to one more. Typically you're going to find a 100, maybe it's 50, maybe it's 100, sometimes 200, as much as 300. If you look over the history of our state laws, we've had revenue limits in place that restricts the school board's ability to set a tax levy. So you can't, prior to 1993, could set any tax levy you wanted. this put a restriction so property owners know that there's going to be some control on property taxes. So that's been in place since '93. So that's our, typically there's going to be an increase each year. As you take a look at last year, we're at 10,000, we're staying there now, we'll stay there next year. The next biennial budget will determine where we go, okay? Just to put some so we've been frozen. To put this into context, this is us compared to our other Waukesha County school districts. So you can see that we receive the least funding of all school districts in Waukesha County. And 10,000 is the least allowable limit by law. We couldn't levy less. That's the least you can do by law. So we are tied for last throughout the state of Wisconsin on 422 districts. So we have our challenges here. The money that we have, therefore, is going to be put towards the good use to help kids recover, catch up, do what they need to do academically here. Our next steps here, so I'm providing this to the community and to the board here. We as directors, and me in particular, I'll work to summarize the stakeholder input that we're getting through our surveys. We'll create a game plan and an ESSER budget based on the input we're getting and to the needs that we see. We'll share this budget along with a safe return plan and a continuity of services plan if one was needed. On February 15th, that's our next Finance Committee meeting. We'll have a public hearing for that, and we'll take feedback. There will be dialogue back and forth to that end. So we'll take that feedback. We'll come back and evaluate that feedback, reevaluate the budget if need be, and then we plan to present a final budget to the board that we'll move forward with here with your permission on February 28th at the next board meeting. So we have to go through this process here prior to March 11th, so we're kind of hitting the home stretch here. Just a couple things to keep in mind. All final decisions are the board's to make. As of, we have used some of this funding today, but the vast majority of it has not been used. We didn't know how much we were going to get, so it's kind of hard to make plans when you don't know what are you getting. So we're doing our best to figure out as we go here. But we did use approximately $600,000 to start helping kids that are a little bit behind in the elementary school. So we have 6 elementary interventionists and a school psychologist to help the districts load with kids who need psychology-based services. As I said earlier, over the next couple of years, our priorities and student needs will change, so we should stay flexible. Let's make a game plan, but change if need be, okay? That's all I have. Is there any questions I can answer here from you guys?
How long is the survey staying open?
We're going to keep it open for a while. I mean, we have no plans to take it offline. I mean, we're going to, as we go into our public hearing on February 15th, I'd like for that feedback before then. So for folks that are listening or here now, don't wait on your feedback. Put it in now so we got time to digest it.
Tom, at the Finance Committee meeting, we talked about how do we grade, how do we justify this money is well spent and in the right place? Is there something to think about down the road as far as showing everyone that this has been needed? I mean, mental health and everything else.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a number of different ways that we can measure that academic impact, and I would look towards Stephanie and Christine in the back to kind of help. That gets a little bit out of my wheelhouse, so I don't want to front like I know exactly what goes into that, but we can look into different ways to say, here's what we spent, here was the outcome, did we achieve what we were looking for? And I think that accountability is just fine.
Any other questions for Tom? Jill? Okay.
All right,
Thanks. All right, we will move on to committee updates, Student Learning Committee. Cherry?
Wait for Steph. Yep. At our committee meeting this month, we discussed changing the quarantine and follow the CDC guidelines that we adopted the 5-day quarantine for students, and the committee was told that this policy had already been adopted and communicated to the staff. As further recommended, we recommended that masks should be recommended for the optional for students for the days 6 through 10. Sorry, let me say that again. We recommended that after the 5-day quarantine that it would be optional. However, it was recommended that the students wear masks for the last 6 to 10 days as recommended by the CDC. The committee also recommended that the close contact and home isolation periods be shortened to 5 days. We had Mrs. Dianich come in, and she is with our counseling department, and she presented us with the view and the overview of what the counseling department is hoping to improve. We have to improve, and we have new counselors at the high school, and they have a plan, like a plan to improve things, and they laid that out for us. We discussed the academy updates. We were looking at a skilled trades academy, and as the administration looked into those, that we decided that we were doing that well enough already that we really did not have to start a special academy for that, because what the academy would accomplish is already being accomplished without it. So they are going to look into a possibility of a different academy for next year and bring that to us in the future. We also discussed that we approved an ACT prep course for Mukwonago High School for the 21-22 school year. In addition, a stress management phase is being phased out. That's being offered in FIED right now, and that will not be offered any longer.
Cherry, can I just jump in? It's not being phased out as a class, it's being phased out as a FIED credit.
Okay.
It will become an elective.
Okay, and it will get a
because the lack of movement involved with the class, they didn't think that it was meeting the requirements that a FIED course would need to have.
And that would get not a full credit, right? It was only gonna get a half credit or something. That's in here too?
That's for the Algebra Sem 1 class. So we also talked about our Algebra Sem 1 and Algebra Sem 2 classes.
Okay.
Students only getting a 0.5 credit for those classes, not a full credit as been done in the past.
And had some Neola policies. The committee recommended that all changes be approved. That will pass later, right? That goes down in our action items. And we also looked into various, I'm sorry I cannot get on this, so I'm looking at this on my tiny phone because I can't get into my computer, so I apologize for that. We also talked about the different middle school, where is that? I want to ask.
So our pupil, 3 members of our pupil services team came in to talk to the committee about social and emotional impacts of a 6-8 or 5-8 building versus keeping our 6th graders with elementary right now. So that's just an ongoing effort that we're doing to look at learning issues connected with various middle school models. So when the board is ready to look at the survey that's coming in, that we've considered learning models as part of that.
And then this upcoming month, we're going to look at another model. So we're just kind of moving along with that. I think that's pretty much what we said.
Mm-hmm. Any questions for Cherry or Stephanie on any of this? Okay, then we will move on to Personnel Committee.
All right, we talked about the school board election update and how every citizen is allowed to vote for every board member. We had a board member remote participation update, which is the Zoom. And we did the guidance on the vacancy, which we appointed Todd, and the teacher compensation plan update. And then we went over a lot of Neola policies, which will be later on.
Great, and then Finance and Facility Committee, Joel.
We reviewed the audit report, which is an action item later on. Good news is nothing to report from the audit. We toured Clarendon and had a facility plan update. We had Andy talk about some maintenance items at Prairie View that he's taking care of. Tom went through 21-22 budget assumptions and an interesting discussion on debt defeasance. And then the ESSER update, which is something that Tom just covered. And then we also reviewed some Neola policies, which are on the agenda for later as well.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll move into our action items. We have appointments, resignations, and retirements.
Excuse me, Erica. Joel, do you mind if I jump in here? We also recognized Aiden Pedro for an Eagle Scout project. Pretty cool. I built some pitching mounds right here at the high school for the baseball team. Very, very cool Eagle Scout project. So very rewarding to go to that meeting. Might have been the only thing. I mean, besides everything else, it was great.
All right, for, for appointments, we have Robin Keel. This will be a long-term guidance counselor at Eagleville, 2 days a week. For retirements, we have Pat Folk, 6th grade, Rolling Hills Elementary. Jean Amen, learning disabilities teacher at Rolling Hills. Candace Schrader, 4th grade teacher at Section Elementary. Jody Messer, special education teacher at Prairie View. Ingolf Rixman, German teacher at Mukwonago Middle School. Elizabeth Nuccio, 2nd grade teacher at Section. Maura Friend, social studies teacher at Mukwonago High School. And then for resignations, we've got Don Quakelar, 4th grade teacher at Prairie View Elementary.
Are you adding in the Julie?
And Julie, excuse me, I'm so sorry, Julie Time, art teacher at Rolling Hills Elementary.
I'll make that motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in
Maybe we should
Yeah.
just
Second.
take a close look at these staff members that are retiring, because this is an all-star list.
A big shot.
And these teachers are going to be sorely missed. And I should note that Dawn Quakelar technically is a resignation because she wasn't with us enough years to count as retirement, because she stayed home and took care of their kids. But she is a retirement as well. And if you take a look at Pat, Jeannie, Candy, Jody, Ingolf, Elizabeth, Maura, and Dawn, those are some outstanding teachers. Many of them have been with us for many, many years, and they will sorely be missed sorely. They will be extremely difficult to replace, so our principals have their work cut out for them to try to find people that will be able to fill their shoes. Those are some great teachers.
Okay, so we want to thank them for their service.
Yes, please.
Yes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
I'm sorry, who had the second on that? Mary? Art, okay, thank you.
Okay, number 2, open enrollment seats for 2022-23.
Right, and we'll actually be looking for 3 motions with this action item tonight. So as you know, each January, we have to determine how many open enrollment seats that we'll have for next school year. So I gave some information regarding our open enrollment numbers, and as you're aware, we remain a destination district. We have 591 students open enrolling into our district, so 591 kids from living outside our borders that attend our schools. 267 are from Palmyra Eagle, and 167 are from East Troy. So we do take in additional revenue for having those students here, but we do want to be cautious as we accept those students to make sure that we don't have to add staff. So we are going to continue to recommend very limited regular education open enrollment requests, as we have for the last several years, especially at our elementary level. So if parents who are requesting open enrollment for their elementary age kids, if they are going to be flexible, so it's very possible if they're asking for a kindergarten open enrollment to Rolling Hills, we might not have space. But if they're willing to go to Prairie View or Section, it's possible we'll have space. So we should be able to accept most of the elementary students for regular education. And typically, we've accepted all of the open enrollment requests at Parkview and the high school for regular education students. So Christine is here, and she can fill you in on the open enrollment requests for special education. As you know, we've been discussing this a number of times over the last few months, and so that's going to be very limited again as well. Christine, anything to add for that?
Yeah, if you guys want to refer to the memo that I shared with you, I'm just going to take just a minute or two to walk through the numbers. So the first diagram, first table looks at early childhood through 6th grade. And so if you look in that first row, it says cross-categorical early childhood ages 3 to 5. So you'll see that our current enrollment, this is kind of that bubble group that I've been talking about at the different committees. We have 18 students that are currently in early childhood, and we had 1.5 teachers at the start of the school year really working with early childhood, and then the numbers just kind of kept growing. So we have 18 currently, and then we have 5 students that are pending referral at this time for special education services, which gives us a projected enrollment of 23 students for next fall. So if you start to look over at ratios, we had, like I said, a 1.5 FTE originally allotted for this year. Obviously, we've adjusted. And then the recommended ratio would really be 1 to 8, and we're currently sitting at like 1 to 15 if we were looking specifically just at early childhood. So we really don't have any additional programming available, seats available in early childhood. When you start to look at cross-categorical special education, we currently have 186 students that are in special education, 28 open evaluations, so that would give us a projected enrollment of 214. So that would keep us based in our number of teachers that we currently have at a 1 to 10-ish ratio for kindergarten through 6th grade. And that, again, that would stay in line with Waukesha County, and we would have no seats available at the elementary level. Now, if somebody moves in or we have to make an individual determination, we can always look back at these numbers if a new student moves in, but right now our recommendation would be to stay closed at the elementary level. When you start to move into the middle school or our 7th and 8th grade, you'll see the numbers for current enrollment. At 69, we have 8 pending. It keeps our student to staff ratio about 1 to 15, and the recommended ratio would be 1 to 12 or 15, so we're at the high end of that. When you get into the high school level, I broke it down into 3 different programs. I looked at the 9th through 12th grade special education, and you can see the numbers listed out for current and projected enrollment. And then DPI does not want us to identify students based on a specific criteria. Like, we couldn't say a student with a learning disability can't come to Mukwonago. What we need to look at is to make sure, like, do we have the programming, spaces, related services available? And so underneath that, I vetted out what I would consider to be our medically complex students, so our students who really have a lot of needs, whether it's a one-on-one paraprofessional, whether they have specific needs when it comes to self-care, maybe more supervision, 2 people to maybe help move or transport. And so I broke out those numbers as well and then fed that into the 18 to 21-year-old program. So both of those areas are certainly at its capacity. And then the last figure down at the bottom looks at our speech and language, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. And our numbers in speech and language have really exploded since last year. So we currently have 352 students receiving speech and language. We have 28 pending evaluations. So right now we're sitting at about one speech and language person to 36-ish students. In occupational therapy, we have 104 students receiving occupational therapy, which is like a 1 to 55 ratio. We only have 2 in the district, which is a little high for sure. So we'll have to be looking at addressing that. And then physical therapy, we have 37 students, so that is a pretty typical caseload. So I feel pretty confident right now that we are at capacity, but again, if a family were to move in at some point in time, we will always look back at our numbers in our buildings to see if there's spots available.
So then, oh, go ahead, Jerry.
So you said if someone would move in, are we discussing residency or coming to the district as a open enrollment person?
If it was an open enrollment, so if it was a student who moved in and they had an IEP, we would have to look at our schools to see if there was room. But my recommendation would be right now, as open enrollments come in, that we would not have capacity. If somebody moves in August and we're in a different position, we would of course look back at our schools and see if we have availability at that time.
But if someone moves in as a resident, that we have to.
We have to.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what I wanted.
Yes, yes, and I was thinking of alternative applications, but yes.
So,
Go ahead.
We have in total about 40 kids open enrolled currently of students with IEPs. And those students are blended into these current numbers. Yeah. Nice to meet you, by the way.
Todd, you're thinking.
Welcome.
Yeah, turn your mic. Talk into it. Welcome back.
It's a new system since he left us.
Gotten fancy.
We used to use those springs and tin cans.
So Sean, you had said that you're looking for 3 separate motions, so do you have 3 separate recommendations?
Yeah, so then, and then the last piece, and if you take a look at our open enrollment policy, which is 5113, we do have some language in there that the board needs to take a look at tonight, and we need to determine if students who are currently attending our schools, if they move out of the district, will we allow them to stay? And then also siblings of currently attending open enrollment students, are we going to automatically allow them to come? So those 2 different scenarios, and for the first time we had to address this last year, and so you gave the administration the ability to look at a case-by-case basis. So our language in the policy, we could interpret it to say that we automatically or guarantee those 2 different scenarios, that students would be allowed to stay in our schools after they move out of the district, or younger siblings of open enrolled students, we would automatically guarantee that we would accept them. But what we decided last year, and I don't know if you want to continue that practice this year, would be for us to take a look at a case-by-case basis.
That's not what this policy says, case by case.
So
the one in front of us.
So it should, if I take a look at the memo, it says if a school board's open enrollment policy states that a board may guarantee approval. So our policy, it says may.
Okay.
So what we have to discuss is what that may means. So if you expect us to accept all the younger siblings, we'll do that. If you expect us to allow all the students who move out of the district and allow them to stay. Now, if we have a senior in high school who leaves and family moves, obviously we're going to let that kid finish out his or her high school career. But that's not always the scenario. So typically we do our best to allow those students to remain. But there are a few cases, and usually it involves high-cost special education services. And we've talked about that in committee, and that's where the difficult choices come.
So can I back us up to the first recommendation?
Yes.
Deal with the first and the second one first. So
Yes, that's probably a good idea.
the first one is, I think I heard, is that you are recommending that we limit regular education open enrollment for elementary with flexibility.
Absolutely.
I would second that.
Well, that wasn't a motion,
you?
that was a
Okay.
clarification.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so I have a motion by Art,
You limit
regular
elementary
ed.
special ed,
No, this is
No,
for
this
open enrollment for regular education.
right?
So limited, but for elementary, but with flexibility, so
Where there's
we
space,
Kinda
can
like it is
guarantee an
now.
particular
Exactly.
building.
where there's space available at each grade level, at a grade level, we will accept students. If it comes to a point where we have to add staff, we say no.
Correct. Okay, so I have a motion by Art.
I'll second.
I have a second from Joel. Any discussion or questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Sorry, Jill, I'll work on my delay. Okay, so then the second recommendation would be to close open enrollment for special ed at the elementary level. Is that what I'm hearing? And middle school, high school? So closing all special ed open enrollment.
So,
That was the second one I heard.
so to honor a DPI request, so when we take a look at special education open enrollments, we have to take a look at the different programming. And so Christine has done a tremendous amount of work. We want to thank her for that. And what we found is that at this time, none of our programs in special education have space.
I would like to make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Third recommendation is the policy language, or discussion, I should say, as to whether or not we want to keep the policy saying a school board's open enrollment policy states ours states that the board may guarantee approval. So the question on the table is, do we want to continue allowing for a case-by-case basis or guarantee approval for students in our district yet moving out, as well as, is this two separate motions? This is one.
Well, technically, you could rule one way on the first and another way on the second. So then it would need to be two different motions. But if you determine that it's going to be a case-by-case basis or guarantee for both, then you can do it in one motion.
And then also, so an open enrolled student in our district, do we want to guarantee that their younger siblings are guaranteed a spot in the future? So those are the two questions with this policy.
I think from what I'm seeing from the numbers, it seems like there really is no capacity. So I think you can't guarantee a particular spot based on the numbers that I'm seeing here, if that's what I'm reading into the numbers that you have in your policy here. So
If we're full.
if we're full.
Our preference would be that you give us the flexibility to determine it by a case-by-case basis. But I can promise you that we make every effort to get siblings into our schools. We have no desire for older siblings to be attending our schools and the younger siblings staying in Kettle Moraine or East Troy or Palmyra Eagle or wherever they might be coming from. That's not what we're about. However, we do have a rare case where the younger sibling would create a need to add a teacher at a grade level. And then it's a tough decision.
So I'll make a motion that we allow the administration to review these case by case.
I second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion or questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
motion carries. 2022-23 budget assumptions.
All right, we went through those at the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting last week. As we go towards February, I'll bring a 5-year budget outlook next month, but before we do that, we have to have a certain number of budget assumptions. So I propose a set of those, and I walk through the Finance Committee for those, so I'm just looking for your permission to adopt those as we begin to build the budget for next year. You missed a good discussion there, Todd.
Having been at the Finance Committee, I feel comfortable making a motion to approve these budget assumptions.
I will second
I'll
that.
second it.
Jill was there.
Let her have it.
She's going to have a second. Does anybody have any questions for Tom? Okay. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. 2020-21 audit report.
All right, so our auditor came in and, or I should say, joined us virtually, and we had no issues with the report, so I'm just looking for the board to take action to acknowledge receipt and to accept the report as presented.
I'll make a motion to accept the report as presented.
I will second that. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Sick bank proposal.
As discussed at the Personnel Committee, we do have a sick leave proposal for you to consider tonight. And Stephen's here to explain that.
So in some cases, staff do run out of sick time due to catastrophic circumstances. And to begin to address some of this, we were proposing the following. Staff facing catastrophic family illness would be able to apply for 5 additional sick days of leave when their sick time has been exhausted. At that point, if they wanted to, they could also apply to get an additional 5 days, but that would come out of their next year's balance. And so, again, that would only be for staff when they've exhausted all of their sick time. These requests would be made in writing to the Director of Human Resources, and then in consultation with relevant school staff, we would make a determination as to the length of the additional leave.
How often have you seen this?
It's extremely rare. It's very, very rare. And I would also add too, I really wouldn't describe this as a bank. It's an allowance. It's an additional piece. It's not based on donation or any of those complications. It's just something that we would offer. 5 days from us, and then 5 days coming from the following year's sick bank allotment.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. So would you call this a sick leave allowance rather than sick bank?
Yep, I would say that.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. I think, there it is. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Neola policy updates.
Yeah, I want to apologize for the heavy number of policy changes that we have. And again, these are updates. Many of them are minor legal changes that are recommended by Neola and legal counsel. But we do have a number of them. If there are too many, we can certainly chop them in half and bring the back half next month. But otherwise, all of them have been reviewed by the various different committees and recommended for approval.
Having been at all of the committee meetings this month, I just want to assure you, if you weren't there, that these policies definitely were looked over, discussed, and addressed. Because some have been pulled out. These are not all of them. There were some we didn't feel comfortable bringing forward, so we went through all of them. So I will make a motion that we approve these.
I'll second.
Well, we waive the second reading first.
I will make a motion that we waive the second reading.
Thank you, Mary. I'm sorry, I was sleeping here.
I'll second that.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second to waive the second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then I will make a motion that we approve these Neola policy updates.
Aye.
I'll second that.
I'll second it.
Aye.
I'm sorry, who had the motion?
Jill's just still saying aye. So I have motion, Sherry second, Jill said aye.
Oh, it's sorry.
It is not your fault, but get ready, because we're doing it again. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Aye.
Okay, the 2022-23 calendar.
So I've attached the 22-23 recommended calendar. Its proposal is very similar to our current calendar, the 21-22 school year calendar. We again start on September 1st, and again, that's per state law. Our last day of school is Friday, June 9th, and Thanksgiving, Christmas, spring breaks are all very similar. The Personnel Committee gave preliminary approval to this proposal back in November. And per their approval, we did share the major vacation dates with our parents in December. And so we're looking for approval to move forward. We can share the whole thing.
I'll make the motion.
I will second that. Any questions or discussion? Did you two get to look at the calendar? What do you think? Looks good? Okay.
Yeah, we met on last week, Thursday, and we talked about the calendar quite a bit. And they agree that it would be really nice to start school before September 1st. To have that flexibility at least.
College is coming.
We can keep hoping and dreaming that some year we can do that. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
And I didn't know if Michael and Kayla did you guys have anything else to add about the calendar? Any input?
I personally wish that we could start before September 1st, but seeing as we can't, it's fine.
That's how we all feel, yeah. Okay, last but not least, we're talking about our COVID quarantine policy for students and staffs with an in-home positive. Do you have anything to say about this? Otherwise, I'll jump into it.
So I thought you were going to lead this
Yep.
conversation?
Oh, that's fine. I wanted to make sure. So this was an agenda item that I asked to be put on, something that I wanted us to discuss, definitely do this in public. We've been hearing from some community members, as well as we did make a change in the quarantine policy for if you test positive. We did adopt the CDC change, where you're home, regardless of vaccination status, you stay home for 5 days. That's if you're positive and showing symptoms. And then after day 5, if you're feeling better, you can return back to school. After that, mask optional. So that being our test positive new policy, I wanted to make sure that we address the fact that we have this policy for in-home positives and make sure they correspond. I feel like what we approved in fall is no longer really serving its purpose, in my opinion, that I don't feel the need for close contact quarantines anymore, especially because it does state if you're vaccinated, you can go back to school, and if you're not, then you have to wait. I don't like that language, so I would like to see that either removed or the policy go away. So those are kind of my proposals for discussion. I think at this point, with the way things are going, we can just say, even if somebody in your home has COVID, if you're sick, stay home. If you're not, go to school. So.
I'll agree with that.
Do you want to make that a motion?
Sure. I'll make that a motion.
I'll second it.
You guys just motioned and seconded my own idea. I didn't even get it. That's okay. Any question or policy? Or question, discussion on this policy?
Or like just state it again.
State it again. So my understanding of Craig's motion is that we would be removing the quarantine requirement for in-home positive. So family members who has an in-home policy, in-home positive does not have to quarantine if they remain symptomatic free. If you're sick, stay home. If you're not, come back to school. Questions, comments, nothing?
I'm thinking.
Okay. Jill, did you hear all of that?
I heard all of it. I understand, and I'm in agreement with the motion and discussion.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay. And one opposed. So motion carries 7-1.
So just so we can have some clarification.
Yes.
So we're talking about people that have not tested positive.
Correct.
Okay, so people that might have been identified as close contacts, or they were identified as close contacts because they were in-home. There was an in-home family member that was positive. So if a student tests positive or a staff member tests positive, then we continue the current guidelines with the 5 days.
For the individual that's positive, yes,
Right,
but not
okay.
for their family members, for students and staff.
Okay, students and staff. So that was the next question. So the in-home positive quarantine, that the motion that you just passed, that's for students and staff, or just students?
My understanding of what I was proposing was for students and staff.
Students and staff.
That's what you understood with your motion?
Correct.
Okay,
Does that change anybody's vote? Okay.
thank you.
Okay, and then we'll move on to unfinished business. Superintendent report.
So the only thing I have for superintendent report is just, if you take a look at your board docs, wanted to talk about our meeting schedule coming up. So last day of January, as we move into February, Learning Committee is on the 7th. Personnel, just want to make sure that everybody's good with meeting on Valentine's Day. Okay. No plans? Okay, we're good then. But then, just a reminder to all that Tom just shared in his ESSER presentation, that Finance and Facilities will meet on the 15th. So are we good with that date? So Tuesday, Feb 15, for the public hearing on ESSER funding plan, and then the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. And then we would be meeting at the high school, because that's our next location for facility study plan.
Did you say February 15th?
I did.
Instead of the 21st?
Tuesday?
That's correct. So, and
At 7 o'clock? 6 o'clock?
so I guess we were looking for your input on what time you want to start. Do you want to start the public hearing at 5:30 and have the committee meeting start at 6?
Okay.
Do we think a half hour is all that we will need? I think starting at 5 would be probably challenging for people.
Right. And so obviously, if the comments extend longer, you can just start your
push
committee
finance.
meeting just a little bit later.
Should we plan for the committee meeting to start at 6:30 so we allow for an hour?
And that's fine as well. It's really up to you guys how you want to. We're more concerned about the date.
Let's do the 15th. I think let's keep it at 6 with the flexibility to push it back, because if we post it for 6:30 and we end early, then we have to sit and wait until
Okay.
6:30.
I'm good.
But the public hearing would be 5:30.
Correct.
And then go until we're done. Okay.
And there's nothing then on the 21st? Are we moving our board meeting up?
So no, we would have no meetings on the 21st, and then we'd have our full board meeting on the 28th. And again, we moved that finance and facilities meeting back a little bit, so we would have more time to develop our plan based upon the input that we're receiving that night from you and others. Is that accurate, Tom?
I'm sorry, Sean, can you repeat that, please?
We moved the meeting from the 21st to the 15th, so it'd give us more time to put that plan together after we
Yeah,
hear the input.
we want to consider the feedback we get on the 15th and to have it about 2 weeks to react and incorporate that feedback. That's better than just 7 days.
And then one more, and that's in March, another unusual situation. So March 7 is Student Learning Committee, March 14 is Personnel, but Finance and Facilities is on the 21st, which is over our spring break. And so I do know some people will be gone on that date, and so we're looking to move that to the 14th and have Personnel start at 5:30 and Finance and Facilities at 6:30 or something along that line.
Are you fine with 5? Art, are you fine with 5:30? Okay. I'm fine with 5:30.
So Mary, I'm sorry, 5:30 for
For
Personnel?
personnel, yep.
Okay, thank you. And then 6:30 for Finance and Facilities, okay, on the 14th of March?
We'll give it a go. I mean, I'm at both of them, so if personnel wraps up on time. If you're going to start at 5:30 instead of 5.
5:30.
Okay.
We'll adjourn early.
Okay. Then yeah.
Oh, we'll be done.
Okay. And then you have the rest of the meeting dates for April, May, and June, July, and August. And we're confident that August has 5 Mondays. Typically, we move that board meeting up a little bit so we can finalize our staffing, but since there are 5 Mondays, August 22nd is the 4th Monday, we're good with that. We're good with that Monday for the regular board meeting. And of course, based upon your vacations, sometimes our committee meetings change in the summer. And we'll look at those a little bit closer to summer. It seems like a long ways away.
Yeah, it does.
And it will come very quickly. Is everybody good with August, with the full board being 1 week early?
But it's not 1 week early. Typically, we do move
We
it
have
up,
5.
but,
Oh, I-
yep.
Okay. Sounds like we're good.
And then, anyone have a question? If not, then I just was going to jump to recognition and correspondence, but maybe you have something for the board president's report, Erica. Okay, so then I do want to spend a little time on recognition and correspondence. And so I do want to make sure we give a big shout out to our 2 adult crossing guards in the district, and that's Judy Podney and Tammy Bame. So Judy does the crossing guard duties here in the village of Mukwonago, and then Tammy in the village of Big Bend. And so the second week of January is and I wrote it in here, let me make sure I'm reading it correctly. It's the Adult School Crossing Guard Recognition Week in Wisconsin. And those are not easy jobs, especially in the cold weather. Nobody wants to do it, so we really want to extend a big thank you to both those ladies for doing a great job to keep our kids safe.
We should probably get them heated socks or something.
We got them some gift cards from
Yeah,
Quick Trip.
for sure.
Foot warmer.
And then we also want to say congratulations to Dustin Lehman, who's our College and Career Readiness Coordinator. You all know Dustin, and he has been selected to receive a special recognition award from the Wisconsin Technology Education Association. So Dustin's being recognized as one of the top administrators in the state for all his good work with the CTE program at MHS and at Parkview Middle School. And so that's a big congrats to him. If you remember, that's the same organization that recognized our career and technical education program at MHS as the program of the year. Back in March of 2019, we had that recognition ceremony in the Wisconsin Dells, and then we had the shutdown right after that, so it sort of got lost in the shuffle there.
Sean, we should have Dustin in to talk about that job board he's working on.
Oh, yes.
You know, Triple Crown, a whole bunch of people are getting involved, maybe next month or a couple months.
Absolutely. Yep, that's been a great addition. And then Michael mentioned Mr. Uhazi and the MHS choir earlier with the Night on Broadway program, but also in your folders is the program from the MHS concert choir performance at the Wisconsin Choral Director State Conference. It was the first time our choir was able to perform at that conference, and according to PJ, the kids rocked the performance, and the MASD choir programs are on the Wisconsin map choir-wise. That's also the event that our middle school choir director, Lori Wildeman, was recognized as the Director of the Year. We want to make sure we recognize all the different MASD student groups, staff, and community groups for their recent generosity. Our student reps mentioned the MHS SAVE group, and they're raising $2,700 for the Waukesha Community Fund. Also, a big thanks to our MASD basketball community and other student groups for their efforts to raise over $137,000 for Make-A-Wish Foundation. Just an outstanding effort. We want to say special thanks to the Gendusa family for leading that effort and promoting that effort, and also, of course, the Stark family. And you know the Stark family, they've been champions for Make-A-Wish program. Their son, Caden, received a wish, and after that, then they led a number of fundraising efforts to make sure funds were raised for other families and other kids to get wishes. Caden, of course, passed away at 14 in September of 2019. So thanks to that Stark family
Sean,
as well.
I think Caden's wish has donated 31 other wishes with that. You know,
Yeah, so I can't remember exactly the number, Craig, but it's been an astounding amount, so a fantastic job. And then also to Frank Allison. I don't know Frank, but he has a business in Big Bend, the Rocks Positive Canine Training. They donated $1,000 to Big Bend Elementary for their adoptive family at Christmas. So we want to thank them. I also want to give a big shout out to our MHS Cyber Patriot team. So we've talked about their Cyber Patriot team a little bit before, but our teams are really impressive. So we have 2 Cyber Patriot teams, 5 competitors each. And again, Cyber Patriots is the Air Force Association's National Youth Cyber Education Program. It's been created to inspire K-12 students towards careers in cybersecurity or other science, technology, engineering, and math disciplines. The coaches for the teams are Corey Mack. Corey is a math teacher, computer science teacher at MHS, and also WCTC instructor and MHS parent, Mark Kruskowski. Both teams placed first in the Wisconsin State competition this year, and that allowed them to go on to the national competition. And our platinum team, out of 4,400 teams in the country, placed 126th. So 126 out of 4,400. That's the top 3%. And our gold team placed 315th out of 4,400, and that's in the top 8% at the national level. So really an outstanding job by those students and those coaches. So great work. And then finally, a big congratulations to our girls ski team for qualifying for the state competition. I think that's in La Crosse next weekend. Annalise Rasmussen, who's in 10th grade. Anna McLean, who is in 11th grade. Our MHS dance team qualified for state. That's also in La Crosse next weekend for kick and jazz routines. And then we had 2 of our female wrestlers compete in the very first state competition for the WIAA this past weekend. And Kaylin Whittier placed 6th in state, and Elena Stevens, although did not place, she wrestled well and competed at the state competition as well. And then finally, George, I know I said finally once before, but this is really finally. George Lumen, who's our ski coach, was selected to coach the all-Wisconsin ski team at the Nationals in New Hampshire. And George has been our ski coach for a long, long time, and at least 30 years. So we want to thank him for all of his efforts.
Thank you. That's a ton of great stuff going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things going on.
Wonderful. All right, well, thanks for that. We are going to, well, I will entertain a motion to
I
move
will
into
make-
executive session.
Can I jump in real quick, Sean? If you Eddie Kimenow
Yes.
had a really big surgery 2 weeks ago, last week. The kids at school lined the hallways for him. The band played. It was cool. It was very cool. And I think he's in Pittsburgh having surgery, and keep me in your prayers.
Okay,
You know,
absolutely.
great kid.
Yeah, thanks for that
And
reminder.
I'd like to shout out to the band. The wrestling meet Thursday was rowdy against Arrowhead. The band really makes it. It really does. And of course, basketball games. The band has really come a long way. They're doing great.
Yeah.
They're killing it.
So Emma Angeli and the rest
Yep.
of the band staff and,
Yep.
and obviously those students, they do a great job.
It was fun. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Shout outs? All right, I will entertain a motion for executive session.
I will make that motion.
Okay. I will second. Cherry, if you could roll call us in.
Sure.
Don't forget Todd.
Erica?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Art?
Yes.
Craig?
Here.
Jill?
Yes.